Bec Dahl, a partner at Nichols Family Lawyers. Today I'm going to be talking about how to navigate surrogacy in Victoria, covering the legal framework and risks and things to be aware of for both intended parents and surrogates. So to start with, what is surrogacy? So surrogacy is where a single person or a couple who are the intended parents of a child enter an arrangement with someone to carry that pregnancy for them, and that person's a surrogate. That person carries the child and then when the child's born, transfers it to the intended parents. Surrogacy comes under the umbrella of assisted reproductive treatment and IVF. And in Victoria, surrogacy is regulated by the Assisted Reproductive Treatment Act of 2008. There are two types of surrogacy, altruistic and commercial. Altruistic surrogacy is where the surrogate doesn't receive any payment or compensation for delivering the child. They can be reimbursed for reasonable expenses like medical bills, travel costs, legal fees, or lost wages. But the key point is that the surrogate isn't being paid to carry the baby, they're volunteering. Here in Victoria, altruistic surrogacy must be approved by the Patient Review Panel. Commercial surrogacy is where the intended parents pay the surrogate more than those reasonable expenses, so the surrogate obtains a material benefit. Commercial surrogacy is illegal here in Australia. There's also two ways that surrogacy can occur, either traditionally or gestationally. Traditional surrogacy is when the surrogate uses their own eggs and the sperm is donated, often from the intended father, which means the surrogate has a genetic link to the child. Gestational surrogacy happens when a fertilized embryo is transferred into the surrogate and they have no genetic contribution to the child. This is the more common way it happens in Australia and generally the only way that surrogacy can happen through a clinic. In Victoria, there's certain criteria that someone must meet to be able to be a surrogate. The surrogate must be over the age of 25 and younger than the age of 52. Here in Victoria, they must have already given birth to a child of their own and have no history of pregnancy-related illnesses or complications. They must have a relationship with the intended parents of at least 6 months at the time the embryo is transferred, and neither the surrogate or the intended parents can suffer from any significant psychiatric disorder that would impair their decision-making or care of the child. And a person or an intended parent is able to commission a surrogate provided they meet one of the criteria that they are unlikely to become pregnant, unlikely to be able to carry a child or give birth, or likely to place their health or that of the baby at risk if they become pregnant. In Victoria, when a child's born through surrogacy, the law is very clear. At the time the child's born, the surrogate is recognised as the legal parent of the child, and if the surrogate has a spouse or de facto partner, that person is also the legal parent of the child, and the birth must be registered in their names. What this means is that the intended parents, the one who planned for the child and will raise them, aren't actually recognised as the legal parents at the time of birth, which means they don't have parental responsibility for their child straight away and have to go through a court process. To legally transfer that parentage, the intended parents have to apply to the County Court of Victoria for what's called a substituted parentage order. This can be made between 28 days and 6 months after the baby's born. If the court grants that order, the legal parentage is formally transferred from the surrogate and her partner, if they have one, to the intended parents. It's really important to seek legal advice during this process, especially if the child was conceived in another state or territory in Australia, as there's different laws and processes in each state. At Nichols Family Lawyers, we have experience in advising both surrogates and intended parents about their rights and legal obligations through surrogacy, both in Australia and overseas. And if you're thinking of growing your family through surrogacy or becoming a surrogate, please don't hesitate to contact us to discuss the journey.